Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Hello. So
Outstanding.
far, so
All
good.
right. Got you back, man. We're off and running.
Yep.
You ready to go? You want me to just do the countdown and a reintroduction, and we'll kind of go from there?
Sure. Yeah, sounds great.
Okay. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, folks. Welcome back to the debut podcast from Alien Propulsion Technology. I am your host, Larry Langley, as we sail on the sea of uncertainty, and I am your captain. Anyways, so little technical difficulties there, but we're back online here with Rob Rocca, the esteemed guitar player from Alien Propulsion Technology. Rob, how are you this evening?
Doing good, Larry. Doing good.
Outstanding. Well, thanks for enduring the difficulties there. And we're going to kind of jump right back to where we were at there. We were talking about the 7-string Scottish handmade guitar that you were playing last time we got together, the Klingarian Reaver. And we got cut off during that. So if you'd like to bring the listener back up to speed on that marvelous instrument.
Yeah, because I think it's probably better to just it's short enough. We just start at the beginning. Super interesting. I was watching this podcast, a beautiful podcast. Arnold plays guitar, and he does an unbiased gear review, and he reviewed the Klingarian 6-string. I went to Alan Klingarian's website, and I found that he had a 7-string. I needed one, so I got in touch with him. Alan is a great guy. He's not crap because he's Scottish. And he said, as a matter of fact, I'm getting rid of this. It's just kind of a one-off. If you'd like to purchase it, it's going to be X amount. I think I ended up paying maybe just short of $2,000 with shipping American. Everything was converted into British Astra dollars over the internet. But yeah, and it turned out to be a really awesome guitar. Their proprietary pickup system is in it with the MAD pickups. They're mutually assured destruction pickups that are very much their own thing. It's a unique pickup sound, and they have a lot more depth than like even say, I don't know, like a bare knuckle pickups, even something like that. Pretty cool. And exotic woods and everything. I was excited to get it. It took a while. I had to pay for it in 2 installments. Alan was really nice the entire time. I got it, and it turned out to be extremely high quality. Zebra wood on the face, and then I believe some type of ash for the main body. I actually, took it to Indianapolis when you and I played. Just basically getting the bass and drum tracks together for Gorilla Wolf, and really love that guitar a lot. It's got a little bit of a sad ending though, because recently financial concerns forced me to part ways with the Klingarian Reaver, and I ended up selling it to a young man, Dakota, and I cannot remember his last name, something, and he's out there in the Midwest in one of those big states like Wyoming or something. So he is now the proud owner, sadly for me and happily for him. And maybe we'll see some stuff coming out of Dakota's studio with the Klingarian. Pretty cool guitar.
Outstanding. Well, great explanation of the instrument there. And of course, our condolences for having to part ways with the instrument. Completely understandable in today's crazy economic environment, especially the current time that we're in with, most of the nation being under quarantine of some sorts. But one of the things I wanted to touch on here is the signature Rob LaRocca guitar sound. Something you've carried throughout, even going back as far as the Waste Management days, but definitely throughout the Ancestor albums. and then bringing an even more evolved version of it to alien propulsion technology. And one of the things I noticed is that, for rhythm tracks, not a super complicated or even advanced system, far more basic than people probably would guess. And then, of course, using a much more modern, up-to-date, top-level technology for the leads. So maybe explain to the listener, some of the gear that you use to record with, and touch on how simple you were able to keep it for the recording of the rhythm tracks, and how technically not difficult, but really, you went pretty far into it doing the leads. So the mic is yours, my friend.
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. When I started playing guitar, probably one of my favorite guitar players, maybe the favorite, was Vivian Campbell. So I had an RHS. I think it's RHS, or is it REH? I can't remember. I think it might have even been Starlix, but I had a VHS instructional cassette with Vivian Campbell, and I learned a lot about my style. I basically learned my style from Vivian Campbell. So everything that you're hearing, almost, I ripped off from either him or Eddie Van Halen. And their rigs are really simple. It's a humbucking pickup and just a lot of work with the right hand, palm muting, harmonics, things like that. That's my style, and vibrato for the chords, dyads, and double stops and triple stops on the fretboard. So it doesn't take a whole lot. Those things were difficult to come by in the 80s when I started playing. It was difficult to find that kind of sound. It wasn't every day. Now, luckily, I can get the same type of thing with just a good high output amplifier and maybe, an EQ pedal, and just scoop a little of the mids out, and I've got exactly what I need. So when we did the alien propulsion technology, when we did the demos, I just used my Kemper, and I have a Mesa Boogie profile on there that I use, which is good enough for doing the demos for sure. Then when we recorded at Congress House and we did the guitar tracks, I rented a Mesa Boogie, a real Mesa Boogie dual rectifier, and then a Marshall 212 closed back cabinet, and mic'd that with 3 different mics. I can't remember what they used. It was like a Shure SM57, and then a couple like almost like maybe like just short of a Telefunken, that type of thing, like with a tube mic, 3 of those. And then we cut 3 different tracks with each guitar. The main sound comes from doubling the guitar, which is something that Morrisound showed me, and Zach Wild talks about it a lot. A lot of his stuff is triple tracked even. So I just double tracked all my parts, and that was pretty simple. When it came to the leads, I just used my Kemper. That's the leads that you hear on that recording I did at home. I just recorded into my DAW from the Kemper. And we, at Morrisound, when we did the mastering process, we just had him import those into the timeline. And, super simple. Not a whole lot to it, but it's, if you don't know what you're hearing, it could sound crazy. It could sound more complicated than it is.
Well, I got to say, having been privy to the, tracks as they were coming in for the first single of Alien Propulsion Technology, entitled Gorilla Wolf, give it a listen. It is available on our website, www.alienpropulsiontechnology.com. But one of the things that really captivated me, in particular on the rhythm tracks, was that you didn't use the Kemper. It was a dual rectifier, and if I remember correctly, I want to say an EQ or a boost pedal of some sort, and that was really about it. The primary sound came from the playing itself. It was really the playing and the technique that got that signature sound. And you see in today's world a lot of promotions on gear to use, and it was really amazing to me that you were able to do it with really a bare bones setup. At least for the rhythm tracks. And in regards to the Kemper, obviously that's top of the line gear. You pretty much have that in the Fractal, or the 2 big ones that you see a lot of people using for various applications. But it ultimately comes down to the technique of the player. Maybe elaborate with the listener a little bit on anything they can do to developing those sort of playing characteristics, technique, and the amount of time and dedication it takes to be able to have that in the arsenal.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're absolutely right. And when I went to do the rhythm tracks, when I went to Congress House, I anticipated having to use the overdrive pedal and possibly a noise reduction pedal, but I didn't end up even using that. So those recordings are just straight into the face of a Mesa Boogie dual rectifier. And that's all really that was necessary. So if you grew up like listening to Metallica, most of those bands, and I cited Vivian Campbell as my main influence, probably stylistically. It has a lot to do with the right hand, and you'll want. I mean, the guitar I used was a mahogany-bodied Strat, Super Strat with EMG pickups, so it had a pretty good sound coming out of the guitar, and then into just a Mesa, pretty simple. But the right hand, you can really. I would encourage anyone who's trying to get any type of personality in their tone, experiment with the right hand, especially like muting, harmonics, how much you lean in with the pick. And, if you're touching the pick and the meat of the thumb at the same time on the string, it can cause what they call a split harmonic, which is pretty cool. You intersperse that with a lot of palm muting and what you're doing with your left hand, and you can definitely create your own sound. It's whatever you're hearing in your head, and then that will automatically come out on your instrument. I think Itzhak Perlman said one time that he said, like, when you're playing violin, he said either you're gonna hear it and you're gonna get there eventually, or you're gonna get frustrated and give up. Everybody's basically gonna bring out what they're hearing in their head in time. A little bit of help, can make that process shorter, though, mercifully. Yeah.
All right. Man, great explanation. Let's take a trip back in time here, and let's go back into the childhood of Rob LaRocca. Obviously, from this interview, you guys can tell that Rob is a complex individual, yet can explain things in a manner that all of us understand well. So, really a great mind. But, what was your childhood like? And, what were the things that caused you to grow into this level of musicianship and being a fine human being? What brought you to where you're at now?
That's a really interesting question. I thought that this might be helpful for anybody who's like, why is he so messed up? This could be like the codex key, that unlocks the entire picture for my personality. I know I have a few problems, but basically, when I was very young, probably like about 8 years old, my parents, the LaRoccas, Mr. and Mrs. Tony LaRocca, Donna and Tony LaRocca, had friends, two friends, Sarah and Pete Matusi. So there's two great Italian names for you, the LaRoccas and the Matusis. And my parents would go visit the Matusis, and they would allow me to hang out with Pete and Sarah's son, PJ Matusi, who was in his teens. He was probably maybe about 16, and I was like 8. So as you can imagine, he was a pretty cool guy to me. I couldn't even believe I was there. He had the whole downstairs thing. He had a room in the basement with black light, beer cans and a fishing net, and the whole deal. And they seemed to have some cash, so he had all the goodies that I didn't, necessarily experience as much as at home with, like fan magazines, rock magazines, and recordings and things like that. So one of the first things that I remember learning from him was Black Sabbath. He influenced me to purchase my first Black Sabbath album, which was Paranoid, of course. And I remember looking for it. My mom, very nicely, you can imagine like an 8-year-old kid, and we're going to these kiosks in the mall, do you have Black Sabbath, Paranoid? And they would say, I remember we went to this one, and she said, no, we have Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and she brings it out, and it's got that amazing artwork. And how about that? And I remember looking at it, I was like, no, it's got to be Paranoid. And then we finally found it, I think, at like Kmart or Zayre's or something like that, a big department store. And looked at the cover for Paranoid. I was like, man, I should have gotten Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. But indeed, the content for Paranoid was much heavier. So that's kind of what started me on the road to metal insanity. And just listening to that dark stuff and getting into later when I was picking out my own stuff, like Kiss and Ozzy, obviously, branching off from the Black Sabbath. My mom never wanted me to play a rock instrument. So when I was about 10, I was trying to get a bass. I really wanted to start on bass guitar. And my mother was like, not having that, that would not happen. So I played trumpet for about 4 years. About 10, maybe even earlier than that. But about fourth grade through middle school, I played trumpet in band and orchestra and learned to read music and everything. And then I had a little bit of a detour with some social maladjustment. Just don't quite fit in sometimes with society and didn't know how to mediate with that. So I got into a little bit of trouble when I was in my early teens. And as I started to extricate myself from that gradually, I think my parents realized maybe he needs something to occupy his mind and his time. And I was allowed to have a guitar. And then I was about 16. So that was, and then I started, and Randy Rhoads, when I heard, I believe it was Over the Mountain for the first time, that's when I knew I was going to play guitar sometime. As soon as I was able to make my own decisions, I knew I was going to play some guitar. So he turned out to be a pretty big influence with that. And definitely, the fuel that fired me and put me on my way to alien propulsion. It was the propulsion that made me an alien finally.
Well, and that does indeed bring me to our final question for this podcast, and it's really been a lot of fun to do. But let's leave the listener on a note of question here. And that would be, as is the band name, Alien Propulsion Technology, do aliens exist? And if so, what do you think is the agenda?
Wow, that's a good question. That's interesting. Yes, I think most likely, as we consider it, because anything that's not strictly terrestrial to our planet, I guess, would be considered an alien. So even if you're a Christian or Muslim or whatever, and you consider these celestial beings that are outside of our planet, and their existence, and those could be considered aliens as well. I think what everybody always imagines in their mind are the Greys, the typical Steven Spielberg alien, and I do. I think that I'm just going to come right out and say what I think. I'm not going to be politically correct. I do. Yeah, I do. I believe in aliens and leprechauns. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, and what is their agenda? I don't know. What I could say for sure is I lived through from Radio Shack to where we are now. So I saw how quickly what is the word? It's not explainable. How did we get from there to where we are now so quickly? That's a huge learning curve. So yeah, I believe probably that aliens are sharing their technology with us, or maybe we've appropriated it. But I believe it's a contract, and I can't remember Bill Cooper, I think. I cannot remember the guy that you had me check out. I kind of agree with that. Maybe it's true or maybe it's not. But in my own mind, that's the truth.
Outstanding, Rob. Outstanding. And really want to thank you for your time today with this podcast. And I think we together can express a genuine amount of love and concern for humanity right now during these trying times. We are here with you, and mind, heart, and soul. Certainly, thinking all positive thoughts and prayers, incantations, or any other thing of that sort, that we may make it through this together, and everything will be okay in the end. And we really do believe that. So, Rob, thank you very much for your time today. Any parting statement before we finish up?
No, but I appreciate it. Thank you, Larry. It's been a lot of fun. Hope we do it again real soon.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And this is the conclusion of the debut podcast from Alien Propulsion Technology. And I am Larry Langley. We are sailing through the seas of uncertainty, and I am your captain.